Have you ever run an ad, set aside an entire day to interview all the applicants, then had half of them not show up, hire one person, and they didn't make it through 48 hours? Well, today I've got a solution for you on how to take all the effort out of this process. Hey everybody, Greg Winteregg here, CEO Matterhorn Business Development. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notifications on all the great content that we're pumping out every week. Also, be sure to get my book, Fun at Work. It'll be in the link down below. So, I know there is so much frustration around trying to hire a good employee. And a typical scenario is you run an ad, you get a bunch of resumes, you talk to people on the phone, you schedule them to come in, and you're doing 2 or 3 a day, or sometimes maybe even just, this is all I'm going to do today. By golly, I'm going to have somebody hired by the end of the day, and you have them scheduled for every 30 minutes. Half of them don't show up. Some of the others do show up. You come up with what you think is a good employee. You set aside a day for them to show up next week or 2 weeks from now. They show up and in 48 hours, you're like, I want the person that I interviewed, not the person that showed up on the job today. So, what in the world do you do? How do you get rid of all of this annoying process? Well, I have done group interviews. This is not my unique idea. Other people have talked about it, but I'm going to make a video today for you on exactly how I do this. So, first of all, you go ahead and you run your ad and you do the same filtering process like you always have done. You look over the resume, you call the person, you have an initial chat with them, and make sure that there's, enough affinity there in that phone call to actually have them come in. But here's what's going to be different is now you're going to have everybody show up at the same time. So you're going to have a room where you can put 10 or 15 people in the room. And so you do your initial vetting process and you tell everybody to show up at the office at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. And so you have now, let's say you have 8 people scheduled. So here's how you set this up. You have a place with 8 chairs. You have clipboards with a blank piece of paper on it, 8 clipboards. You have a sign-in paper at the front desk, and as the applicants arrive, you welcome them. Some of my owners like to take a photograph so they can put a name with the face on the registration list for later reference. You take their picture, you give them the clipboard and say, please have a seat over there. If the meeting starts at 10, then the meeting starts at 10. So at 10 o'clock, the door is locked. If somebody shows up at 10:01, they've just eliminated themselves. If they can't be prompt and on time for a job interview, what's it going to be like if you hire them? All right, so that's harsh. No, my advice is no exceptions. So now, this is best with 2 people. You can do it solo. But if there's a second person, and let's say I was helping you. So I would stand up in front of the room and I would thank everyone for coming. I would tell them a little bit about the position. Maybe this is a manager position. The basic pay range is going to be roughly $40,000 a year, but it's going to be based on your experience and information you give us today. So then I would introduce the business owner. And I recently did this with one of my chiropractic clients. So I introduced the doctor. She comes up. She says a little bit about herself, where she went to school, how many children she has, why she loves doing her job, what her basic purpose is. So she gives them that data and certain key points she emphasizes a couple different times, like where she went to school, how many children she has, etc. So then she leaves and I come up and I ask people to put their name on the blank piece of paper. And now I have some questions. Question number 1, what's the doctor's name? Don't you think that's important if you're going to apply for a job that you know the name of the person that you would be working for? If they don't know, that's really bad. Number 2, where did she go to school? Because that was mentioned 3 or 4 times intentionally throughout her presentation, letting people know about her, how many children, etc. You make some very, very basic questions. And it's not a complete disqualification if they don't get that right, but it's really not a good sign. Okay, then the final question that I like to ask is, why do you think you would do well on this job? And so then I just let everybody finish that process. Gather up all the data, then let's just stick with the chiropractor. She and I go over to the side. We already have a few people that we had our attention on. Some weren't paying that much attention. Some were doodling. Some were sketching on while she's talking. I mean, so that's a disqualification. So usually we have 3 or 4 people that we like out of these 8 or 10, and we look over their essays. And now this is the hard part. Then I have to go back in front of this group, and it's like getting thrown off the hockey team or the Little League team. You didn't make the cut. Now, I'm very kind about this. First of all, I acknowledge everybody for coming. I acknowledge them for being on time. This is a great time to be looking for a job in your position. Unfortunately, we have 5 of you who don't have the pre-qualifications that we were looking for, and I want these 4 people to stay, let's say. All right? So the others leave, the door is locked again because somebody might show up 30 minutes late and think they're on time. So anyway, the door is locked, and now the remaining candidates get an application where now they can fill out, references, pay required, etc. We then sit down and do one-on-one interviews of about 15 minutes each. Now, you can make up your own questions. There are certain things that you are interested in more than other things. But as far as the pay goes, here's what I started doing decades ago, and it works like a dream. Because you sit there and well, how much should I offer? If I don't want to overpay, but then I don't want to underpay, and then I don't get the right person. So on some job sites, you have to put a salary range or whatever. But now when we're one-on-one, I want to sit there and I want to lay out the job. First of all, the basic purpose of the company is this, this, and this. Here's going to be the basic purpose of this job. These are the requirements of the job. These are the hours. There may be some travel involved for training. Could you work on weekends? Could you work until 8 o'clock at night if need be? Would you mind making a lunch run? I mean, just get some basic questions out on the table. But as far as pay goes, here's the job. Here's the time requirements. How much would you need to do this job? And what I do is I flip the script on the candidate. So now I'm kind of putting them on the spot, and I need them to tell me kind of what their break-even point is at home, just with regards to whether their spouse has a job or whatever. And so then I really can sit down and say, well, let's say they say $15 an hour or $18 an hour or $22 an hour. Then I can sit down and kind of weigh their experience level and how much training I think they're going to take versus how much it's going to cost me to secure them on this job. So this has just been an awesome, awesome process. And here's my final word of advice. If you're looking for one person, hire 2. It happens all the time. We're excited. We've got a couple of good candidates. Now, don't hire 2 just to be hiring 2, but you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out, okay, good. So then you call them back up after they leave and you assess all your data and you tell them both to show up. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have 2 awesome people and you're going to get that much more work done with 2 awesome people. But here's what typically happens. One of them doesn't show, or one of them doesn't make it for 48 hours. They show up and they were all excited, but then now they're kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of this job and what it's going to require. And they'll send you a text message. Some of them will leave you a voicemail. Those are the polite ones. Others just won't show. And then you're going to be very frustrated because you just did all of this work and the one that you were all excited about is not there, so hire 2. In the last group interview we hired 3. One of them was for a manager position and she was completely qualified to do public relations. So we hired somebody for a position we didn't even answer for, and the person was so excited. Dream job, this is what I've always been looking for, etc. So I hope this has been helpful. Watch it several times. Practice with a second person. Now, if you're a one-man band, a one-girl band, you're just a solopreneur, and this is your very first hire, do this anyway. And at the very, very minimum, this is my final word of advice, hire people you like. Just hire people you like. There might be somebody that's here and they're all qualified, but I don't know, there's just something that isn't clicking, then don't hire that person. And be willing to do it again, a second time or a third time until you find the right person. So for me, This group interview concept is amazing. It saves so much time and is much more effective than doing a ton of interviews one-on-one. So I hope this has been helpful. Once again, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We're pumping out 3 videos a week right now, and hope to see you down the road.